Eleanor Vance was a creature of precision, a woman who had built her formidable career, managing partner at one of London's top venture capital firms, on the immutable law of optimal resource allocation. She was 42, and for her, resources meant more than just capital. It meant cognitive load, emotional bandwidth, and above all, uninterrupted time. This Tuesday evening in Geneva was the apex of a brutal 4-week travel cycle, culminating in a critical $800 million closing tomorrow. She didn't need rest. She needed 2 hours of surgically precise mental calibration. Her investment for this calibration was a table at Le Sillage, a Michelin-starred establishment famous not just for its subtle, molecular cuisine, but for its near-religious adherence to quietude. The ambient noise level was kept below 40 decibels. The lighting was engineered for soothing luminescence, and the required 5-course tasting menu was priced at $350 per head, a cost she happily absorbed for the guaranteed environment. She had specifically booked the Alcove, a secluded corner shielded by a curved velvet banquette and a high-polished rosewood partition, her self-purchased psychological retreat. She arrived 15 minutes early, her sleek black dossier already placed on the white damask tablecloth. She ordered a single glass of a crisp, silent white burgundy, and without another word, she opened the complex acquisition document. The pages were dense with legal text and financial projections. She needed to internalize every potential loophole and pressure point before stepping into the negotiation room tomorrow. The silence was glorious, a hushed, reverent space broken only by the whisper of linen and the distant, almost inaudible sweep of a violin concerto. This was her sanctuary, her decompression chamber, purchased at a premium. The quiet, however, was violently temporary. The disruption arrived 15 minutes after she began reading, just as the restaurant entered its peak dining hour. They were a family of 3, the parents sharp and elegant in freshly pressed garments, radiating an excited, slightly overwhelmed pride, and their daughter, who looked to be about 7. They were seated at the next available table, 5B, a central foretop that was unfortunately adjacent to the edge of Eleanor's alcove. The initial indicators were purely auditory. Oh, darling. Look at the plates, they're silver. Are these real silver, Mummy? They must be, the mother exclaimed, her voice clear and bright, ringing across the few occupied tables like a brass gong. The father, clearly elated, immediately pulled out his phone. Zola, stand up. I need a picture of you right here. Smile at the candle, not the phone, Zola. The flash unit flared, a sharp, blinding white pulse that momentarily annihilated the restaurant's sophisticated amber glow. Eleanor winced, physically recoiling into the shadow of the partition. She lowered her eyes back to the dense text, activating her highly conditioned internal filter, turning the excited chatter into indistinct background hum. She recognized the scenario instantly, having seen it on her travels, people experiencing high luxury for the first time, treating the environment with exuberance rather than the customary reverence. It was a failure of cultural integration, a lack of understanding that in this specific expensive space, the greatest luxury was silence. The mother wrestled with her large handbag, which held a host of non-Le Sillage appropriate items, a cartoon character notebook, a small tablet, and a plastic doll with bright yellow hair. The father, having successfully captured the photo, then took a call. He did not step outside or apologize. He simply answered, "Hello? Yes, I'm at the restaurant now. Le Sillage. That's right. Listen, about the commission structure for the Lagos property. I need you to confirm that figure for the 3rd quarter. It's critical, yes! Can you hear me? The music is a little loud here." His voice was booming, utterly dominating the space, his pride in his new setting overriding any sense of decorum. Eleanor's concentration snapped violently. She had just been trying to reconcile a $4 million deviation in the projected equity line, a detail that required laser focus. Now, her mental map was littered with Lagos, commission structures, and music complaints. She sighed internally, putting down her pen. Her self-imposed silence mandate had failed. She retrieved her noise-canceling earbuds from her small clutch and inserted them, switching on the sound buffer. The father's voice immediately compressed, turning his negotiation into a distant, buzzing whine. But the damage had been done. 20 minutes of crucial analysis time, wasted. The family settled in for the 1st course, and Zola, the daughter, the source, quickly found her entertainment. She began using the heavy, ornate silver spoon to tap on the rim of her water glass. Ping, 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 ping. A steady, rhythmic, maddening chime, slightly off-key, cutting through the electronic white noise of Eleanor's earbuds like a dentist's drill. The mother, focused on describing the amuse-bouche to her husband in loving detail, only offered a weak, distracted correction. "Zola, darling, don't make that noise, please." Zola ignored her, escalating her performance by adding the bread plate to her percussion ensemble. Ping, thud, ping, thud. Eleanor risked a glance up. Mr. Dubois, the elderly, impeccably dressed gentleman at the next partition corner, a Le Sillage regular who always sat at the same table, was also staring, his face a mask of weary, elegant indignation. Their eyes met, a brief, bitter acknowledgement of their shared, expensive misery. Eleanor tried to pivot. If she couldn't perform high-level analysis, she would focus on data input and simple fact-checking. She opened her laptop to a secondary financial model. This, too, was short-lived. The parents, in a misguided attempt to occupy Zola, had pulled out the small tablet. Instead of finding the headphones that were likely stuffed deep in the handbag, they simply handed her the device. The sound erupted, a high-pitched, tinny, hyper-cheerful theme song for a cartoon featuring anthropomorphic farm animals. The sound was thin and piercing, vibrating straight through the noise cancellation, instantly making the task of complex financial review impossible. The waiter, a thin, anxious man, approached their table and offered a polite, hushed suggestion. "Madam, may I offer headphones for the young one? We find it more comfortable for the other guests." The father, still beaming, laughed loudly. "Headphones? Oh, no need. She likes the noise. She likes the music. It's a celebration tonight." "Thank you." The waiter simply bowed, defeated, and retreated, his professional impotence visible on his face. The second and third courses passed in a blur of escalating chaos. Zola abandoned the tablet and decided to explore the fine dining environment. She slid out of her chair, her small patent leather shoes scraping loudly against the marble floor. She began circling the table, her hands trailing along the velvet banquette. Then the inevitable. She stumbled slightly, and her bright plastic doll, the one with the jarring yellow hair, flew off the banquette and rolled directly under Eleanor's alcove table, coming to rest against her bespoke Italian leather shoes. "My doll! My doll is under the ladies' table." Zola's voice was now frantic, laced with sudden, genuine distress. The mother was instantly upon Eleanor's domain, her large, elaborate handbag swinging dangerously close to Eleanor's head.
"Oh, excuse me."
"Pardonnez-moi. My daughter's doll. I must get it." The mother dropped to her hands and knees, peering under the partition. Eleanor stared, rigid with suppressed fury, her meticulously constructed world violated by a desperate mother and a plastic toy. The document, the 800 million deal, the critical focus, all dissolved in the face of this utterly preventable, invasive moment. The mother retrieved the doll, gave a hurried, breathless apology, and tugged Zola back to their table. The brief physical violation of Eleanor's space was the final straw. She couldn't read, she couldn't think, and she certainly couldn't internalize the necessary data. The $350 investment was not only wasted, it had actively created a deficit in her readiness. She spent the next 45 minutes in a state of brittle, high-tension waiting, simply observing the destruction around her. The Ndlovu family, now on their main course, a complex dish involving a delicate reduction sauce, were laughing too hard, drinking too fast, and clearly enjoying their celebratory moment without a single consideration for the hallowed atmosphere. Then came the climax, the ultimate profanity against the sanctuary. Zola, clearly exhausted and overstimulated, decided she did not like the main course. Her mother, attempting to coax her with the complex food, offered a spoonful of the deep red, viscous reduction sauce. Zola refused, shaking her head violently. The mother insisted. In a sudden, spectacular fit of pique, Zola screamed, "No!" and swung the fork in her hand. The small, heavy prongs caught a generous dollop of the rich, oily sauce. It flew through the air in a perfect slow-motion trajectory, sailing over the edge of the velvet banquette and across the narrow gap between the tables. It landed with two sickening splats. The first, and smaller, landed directly onto the white space just above the heading of the most sensitive page of Eleanor's acquisition dossier, a vibrant red smear marking the document as irrevocably contaminated. The second, and larger, landed on the pristine white shirt cuff of Mr. Dubois, who was elegantly raising his own fork to his mouth. A stunned silence fell over the immediate area, a deeper, more profound silence than Le Sillage had ever intended. The parents froze, their wide smiles dissolving into twin masks of utter, agonizing mortification. The mother let out a small, strangled gasp. Eleanor felt a cold wave of disgust wash over her. It wasn't just the sauce. It was the final, definitive destruction of the entire evening. The visual, the olfactory, the auditory, all were ruined. Her document was physically marked. Her concentration was fractured beyond repair, and the air smelled faintly of expensive sauce mixed with the earlier faint, metallic scent of Zola's spilled toy, Mr. Dubois. The victim of the physical collateral damage simply put down his fork, slowly dabbed his cuff with a corner of his napkin, and then looked directly at the Ndlovu family. He did not shout. He did not speak. He simply delivered a look of such absolute, quiet condemnation that it felt heavier than any shouted epithet. Eleanor did not wait for the apologies, which were already tumbling out in a mixture of French and English, frantic and overwhelmed. Her decision was instant, cold, and final. She closed her dossier with a sharp thwack that was audible in the sudden silence. She slipped her laptop into her briefcase. She did not even glance at the red smear on the page. It didn't matter. The mental energy to fix it was gone. She caught the eye of the head sommelier, who was already rushing over, his face pale with apology. She tapped the table once and pointed to her briefcase. The sommelier instantly understood. He brought the check, discreetly folded into a silver tray. Eleanor didn't look at the bill, the full $350 charge for the untouched main course and the nearly full glass of Burgundy plus service. It was a meaningless number now. She placed her platinum card on the tray, signed the slip without looking, and stood up. As she walked past table 5B, the mother tried to intercept her. "Madam, I am so sorry. Please let us pay for the cleaning." Eleanor stopped, her body language radiating controlled, absolute fury. She looked down at the mother, her voice a low, perfectly modulated rasp that cut through the space more effectively than any scream. "That," Eleanor said, nodding toward the sauce stain on her document, "is easily replaceable. The 2 hours of high-level cognitive focus you stole from an 8-figure negotiation, however, is not. That is the cost of your disruption." She did not wait for a reply, merely offered Mr. Dubois a brief, apologetic nod, and walked out. Stepping onto the clean, silent street felt like leaving a war zone. The cool night air did little to dispel the tension coiled tight in her shoulders. She had arrived ready to win, having purchased the piece necessary for victory. She left depleted, carrying the psychological baggage of a catastrophic, expensive failure. The $350 was meaningless. The true cost was the fatigue, the fractured concentration, and the knowledge that she would now have to attempt a complex, high-stakes review in her hotel room on 3 hours of sleep and pure, raw adrenaline. The ultimate lesson was not about class or cost, but about vulnerability. Money could buy exclusivity, service, and the potential for peace, but it could never buy immunity from the fundamental, chaotic, and often profoundly messy nature of humanity, especially when that humanity was being celebrated too loudly, too eagerly, and without a single thought for the highly strung professionals trying to buy 2 hours of silence in the corner. Eleanor hailed a taxi, her mind already racing, trying to reconstruct the debt covenant figures through the lingering phantom scent of rich reduction sauce. She knew she was heading into tomorrow's negotiation at a severe, self-inflicted disadvantage. The sanctuary had been purchased, and it had collapsed.